Well, from one political restart to another, this one on the other side of the Atlantic. In the United States, President-elect Trump's cabinet is taking shape with the promise to do what Trump, the candidate, said that he would do as Trump, the president. And that means getting tough on illegal immigration. Trump says that he plans to name Thomas Homan, acting director of Immigration and Customs Enforcement. Homan was known as the border czar in the first Trump administration. Trump is also expected to name Florida Senator Marco Rubio as Secretary of State. Now, if confirmed, Rubio would become the first Latino to serve as America's top diplomat.
He is fantastic. Marco, come on up. Come on up, Marco.
As Donald Trump campaigned across the country, one of the key establishment figures within his movement was Florida Senator Marco Rubio.
I think they love you a lot.
Rubio was once considered a potential pick to be Trump's vice president before the president-elect settled on J.D. Vance. The son of Cuban immigrants, Senator Rubio has been a vocal critic of the Havana regime, as well as the leftists running Venezuela. As the vice chairman of the Senate Intelligence Committee and a member of the Foreign Relations Committee, he's been an outspoken critic of China, seeing it as an economic and security threat to the U.S.
Could the Chinese government, through its ownership of ByteDance, could they use TikTok to control data on millions of users?
On Ukraine, Rubio opposed Russia's invasion, but this year he voted against a major U.S. aid package for Kyiv, in line with Trump's stated ambition to untangle the U.S. from overseas conflicts. The overall alignment between Rubio and his potential next boss is a major turnaround from their relationship in the past. During the 2016 Republican primary, Rubio was scathing about Trump.
We began to unmask the true nature of the front-runner so far in this race. 5 days ago, we began to explain to the American people that Donald Trump is a con artist.
But a lot can change in the political world, and in this case, bygones are now bygones, as the world watches to see what U.S. foreign policy will look like over the next 4 years.
All right, let's go now to Mike Cowburn. He's a U.S. politics and digital democracy analyst at the European University Viadrina. Mike was also part of our U.S. election night coverage. It's good to see you, Mike. Let me just start by asking, what do you make of Rubio as a possible U.S. Secretary of State?
Yeah, so of course, Trump will still have the ultimate say in the direction of U.S. foreign policy, but Rubio, of course, is going to be the man in the room, meeting foreign leaders and doing the actual work of representing the United States in high-level negotiations and kind of strategic alliances. And remember that Rubio, or whoever becomes the Secretary of State, is also going to be in charge of managing thousands of diplomats and civil servants around the world. And I would imagine that many of those people would have been highly concerned when the election outcome came in. And I would think that they would be somewhat more relieved this morning to see that it's Rubio as the name that's being mentioned, particularly, rather than someone from kind of outside of Washington politics, for example, someone from the MAGA world. I think these people would have struggled to work under those circumstances. So this position is obviously really important and often seen as the most important cabinet pick.
Well, we know that Rubio has had a pro-Trump epiphany of late, and we also know about Trump's demand of total loyalty. I mean, is that the most important qualification for anyone who wants to be in his cabinet?
So I think we've long known that Donald Trump is willing to be pretty flexible on policy positions, on various different things, as long as you kind of swear an oath of loyalty to him. And I think if we look at the confirmed appointees so far, I think we can see that strongly agrees with this assessment. So we've got 6 confirmed positions so far, plus another 2 that we kind of strongly assume. And of those 6 that we've seen as being confirmed, I think you could make an argument that all 6 of them are kind of Trump loyalists. So that's Susie Wiles, who's been named as the chief of staff, Stephen Miller, who's been named as the deputy chief of staff for policy, Tom Homan as the border czar, Lee Zeldin as the Environmental Protection Agency, Michael Waltz as the national security advisor, and then Elise Stefanik as the ambassador to the United Nations. All of these people, to varying degrees, have had their policy disagreements with Trump over the years, and I think the same can be said clearly from the clip there of Rubio. But what they've done is they've decided, no, we will put our loyalty to Trump ahead of whatever other concerns we have, and therefore they've been rewarded.
And I have to ask you about the billionaire Elon Musk. Now, we don't know if he's going to have an official role in this new administration. We do know that he reportedly sat in on a call with Ukraine's president last week. I mean, could he also play a role in U.S. foreign policy?
So I think at this point, Elon Musk is going to play some kind of a role in U.S. foreign policy, whether or not he has an official position. So obviously, he's the head of SpaceX, which operates Starlink, and gives him this kind of technological and global strategic importance. As we see most obviously in the Ukraine example, Starlink has really been a crucial way of maintaining communication networks in the country during the war. And so his decision-making regarding Starlink has already had quasi-diplomatic effects. And there's been kind of discussion or suggestions about whether he would continue to allow Starlink to continue to operate. And essentially, he's become a key stakeholder who can really apply pressure and potentially influence outcomes. And he may even prefer not to have an official government role, because that might kind of remove any kind of constraints or protocols around him, particularly when we think here of his other corporate interests as well. So it might be that Musk prefers an unofficial government role, basically.
Yeah, that would also mean that he would not have to get approval by the U.S. Senate, which would take the politics out of it. Let me ask you about Trump, the candidate, and Trump, the president-elect. While he was running for office, he was very vocal and loud about almost everything. But since being reelected, Trump has largely been absent from the public eye. What's your read on that?
So I wouldn't take too much away from that. I wouldn't infer too much there. By all accounts, there has been a lot of activity at Mar-a-Lago. We've seen a lot of important people coming and going. And he's really been busy kind of taking meetings and shaping his team. And we know that, in 2016, much of the conservative movement was skeptical as to whether or not Trump could really win the election. And I think there was a much looser plan put in place, and we saw kind of a huge amount of staff turnover in that, potentially connected to it. I think that's very different this time. This time, there was a clear plan. We saw that from organizations like the Heritage Foundation with their Project 2025 plan. And this time, there was a strong expectation that Trump could win. And so what we're seeing now is those plans rapidly being put into action. But I also imagine he's also just very tired after what has been a very intense campaign. And remember, this is a man we're talking about here who turned 78 earlier this year.
That's right, the oldest man elected to the office of U.S. president. We can't forget that. Political analyst Mike Cowburn. Mike, as always, we appreciate your analysis. Thank you.
Great to speak to you again. Thanks.